Hello everybody, welcome back to the workshop. My name is Matthew, and in today's episode we are going to be making a reverse. Now, before we get into making it, I'm just going to flip you guys around and talk a little bit about what a reverse is. So, all of these three panels are all essentially bowls. They're made by stretching the center of the panel or shrinking the edges. Now that's essentially how you make a bowl. Now, a reverse, being the opposite shape to a bowl, is made by shrinking the center and then stretching the edges. But shrinking in the center isn't really possible, so we're just going to stretch the edges. To help explain the premise behind making a reverse, I've just got some pieces of paper. And so here you can see when we want to make sort of a bowl shape, if we just gather the material, just make a little fold in the paper, it's essentially stretching the center or shrinking the edges is how we get a normal shape. Now, a reverse, if we just take a flat piece of paper and we try and lay it in the reverse, you'll see that it just won't lay. So if we stretch those edges of the paper, just make little cuts so that it can spread apart a little bit, you'll see that now it'll lay in the reverse just fine, just all the way along. And so that's how we make reverse curves. We just stretch the edges, and this is how we make our templates, just by making these little cuts. So before we make the template, I just quickly want to chat about what these lines are and what they mean. For instance, this line here and over there, those are the borders of our panel, and in the center here, this shows us where our reverse actually is. The rest of this panel, this side and this side, is just normal shape. The reverse is only the section in the middle here. So these two lines on the sides, that's where the reverse blends back into normal shape. And then the center line just shows us not actually the center of these two lines, but more where the reverse is at its deepest point in between the two lines. So we know that's where we need to put the most amount of bend in our panel when we're making the reverse. Okay, I'm gonna get back to templating and I'll talk to you guys in a bit. Alright, so now that I've marked these dotted lines on the top of the panel, I need to transfer them to the other side. So I could put the template, flip it over, put the template on this side and mark those dotted lines, but what I'm going to do is just put a sharper radius wheel in the wheel, and then I'm going to just run it just directly along these lines, and it'll leave a mark on the bottom of the panel, and that way I can have my markings on the top and on the bottom. Let's get to it. Okay, so after I marked these two lines on the bottom, I've now run the panel through the English wheel using a rubber band on the top, something nice and soft, and that's bent the panel. I've done it, of course, upside down. I've run the panel through, that's why I needed to mark it on the back. And that's now just bent the panel to more or less the right angle. Next, we're going to start stretching the edges to get the panel to curve around. Okay, now that you guys have seen me wheel this for a little bit, I just wanted to sort of show you how much curve is already in the panel. So it's a bit difficult to show on a GoPro, but the back of this wheel is flat, and you can sort of see it's touching there at the top, got a big gap, and it's tapering off right to the bottom. So there's already quite a bit of shape, almost about, I'd say 50 mil in the middle. That's how much sort of curve there is, not really shape actually. And I'm going to put it on the buck and explain in a second sort of what my process is while wheeling. Now that we're back at the buck, I just want to sort of explain to you what my process is while I'm wheeling. So you've heard me say that we're stretching the edges and not really doing anything to the center, and sort of essentially then shrinking the center. What I'm doing when I'm wheeling is I'm just wheeling the edge a few times, just right on this edge, until I see the edge get all wavy. So it's not tight anymore. It sort of gets loose and wavy, and then I work my way in towards this line. Now I don't want to cross this line because then I'm going to be moving the reverse. But as long as I stay, just to give myself a good 10 mil gap between the wheel and this line, I'm good. And then I'm just working my way backwards towards that line. So I'm sort of just making this edge loose, so there's essentially too much material. You'll see it'll get all wavy. And then I'm working all this material from here back out to this edge, essentially just stretching all of this until the edge gets tight again, and then working my way over to the other side. So I do one side and then I'll flip over to do the other side, and I'll keep working my way back and forth between the two sides. That way, sort of keeping it even, because I don't know if you can tell, the center line of this reverse isn't actually straight. Right towards the front there, it curves to the left. Now you could accomplish that curve as well just by stretching here. If you stretch this side enough, it will eventually bring this panel around, but it's a lot easier to just wheel the reverse with that curve in it from the beginning. That way you don't have to stretch that side quite so much, and you run the risk of overdeveloping that side. You can see that I'm nearly fitting throughout the middle of the reverse. I've still got to bring it down over these edges, and so I'm just wheeling in this area now, just there, trying to get this to curve around, and the same in the front here. One last thing before I get back to wheeling is you'll notice this side, sorry, let me just move that, right. So you'll notice this side of the reverse here, it actually curves around, where as the reverse I'm wheeling is still dead flat here. So once I get the reverse to about 95% of the right curve, then I'll come back and I'll wheel the shape in. And wheeling that last little bit of shape in will bring my reverse to curve about that last 5% by wheeling the shape in here and the shape in there. And that's sort of my method to make reverses. Now everybody's got their own, it's just whatever each person is a bit more comfortable with. But let me get back to wheeling, and yeah. Alright, so I just wanted to show you guys something quick. I've just got the panel held in place with a couple of clicos at the moment, and you can see that it's not fitting too well. That's high there. And of course, this as well isn't touching. But if I put clamps on the panel all throughout, it will sit beautifully in place. So what that tells me is there's the right amount of stretch in the right places on the panel. Now I just need to change the orientation of the panel, put a little bit more curve in here and shrink this edge here. That'll also help bring that around. So that's what I'm going to do next, is just run the panel through the wheel with the rubber band on to help sort of change the orientation of the panel. The shape is right, now we just need to modify the orientation. Alright, so now that we've got the panel fitting pretty well all the way around, we've just got this little section here in the reverse that's a little bit high, you can see there. Now, if you were to imagine that I took a knife and just cut this from there to there, this would be able to lay in flat, just that amount of stretch there. So what I'm going to do is just wheel now in sort of a triangle shape and then just tapering off as we get further into the panel, little strokes. That will just facilitate just enough stretch that this should lay in. So that's what we're going to do next. So now that we've stretched that edge, you can see that we've brought it pretty much all the way down. It's still a touch high in the middle, so now I'm just going to go over it with a slapper and a hammer and just tap it all the way in. So in the rear, where we stretch the edge of the reverse to add more material to help bring the edge down into the reverse, we're going to do the same thing in the front. And in the front, you can actually sort of see that hopefully that there's a kink right there. And so you can sort of imagine that as sort of the aluminium's going straight across from this point to that point without actually going down. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can understand that there needs to be more material here. Essentially, like, the material's too short. If there was more material, it would have bowed down into the reverse. So what I'm going to do is just wheel from there forwards just past the kink, and that's going to just add more material there to help seat it into the reverse. Okay, so now that I've wheeled from there forwards, you can see that there's no longer a kink there. That's all seated now. Now the kink has moved down to there. So we're just going to do the same exact thing. Wheel from just past the kink, off the edge here, just stretch this out, add a bit more material till this seats as well. Then I'll finish tipping this edge. You can see I've tipped it from there, and then we'll be done with this panel. Alright, so I finished hammer forming the front of that reverse, and I'm going to call it done for now. I'm still going to give it a little bit of tweaking and finessing before we weld it in place. But for now, I've put all the panels on the buck just as a quick mock-up to show you guys. Now, we're not done yet. We've still got to weld all the panels and clean those welds. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But we've pretty much finished about a quarter of a car so far. And there you go. It's looking pretty good so far. Now, in these panels, we've pretty much covered all the metal shaping techniques, from low crown to high crown to reverses. We've tipped edges, we've hammer formed sections of these panels. We've done it all. If you could make these panels, I think you could make just about any panel there is. Build any car you wanted to. Now, I'm not saying it would be easy, but it would definitely be doable. So join me again next week as we make some more panels and a little bit more progress on the Cobra. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again soon.